Delightful. We seem to be starting these videos drinking tea. Hello and welcome to another fine episode of Synths at Bedtime with me, your host, Jason Jervis. And welcome to my channel, GetJervis. Synths at Bedtime, what a crazy concept. We take a passage from a classic novel and we put it with a synthesizer and see how they go together. Today's passage comes from The Return of the Native by Thomas Hardy. I'm going to read Chapter 6, The Figure Against the Sky. And the synthesizer joining us today will be the Sequential Pro 3 SE Edition. Are you sitting comfortably? When the whole Egdon concourse had left the site of the bonfire to its accustomed loneliness, a closely wrapped female figure approached the barrow from that quarter of the heath in which the little fire lay. Had the Rodelink been watching, he might have recognised her as the woman who had first stood there so singularly and vanished at the approach of strangers. She ascended to her old position at the top, where the red coals of the perishing fire greeted her like living eyes in the corpse of the day. There she stood still, around her stretching the vast night atmosphere, whose incomplete darkness in comparison with the total darkness of the heath below it might have represented a venial beside a mortal sin. That she was tall and straight in build, that she was ladylike in her movements, was all that could be learned of her just now. Her form being wrapped in a shawl folded in the old cornerwise fashion, and her head in a large kerchief, a protection not superfluous at this hour and place. Her back was towards the wind which blew from the northwest, but whether she had avoided that aspect because of the chilly gusts which played about her exceptional position, or because her interest lay in the southeast, did not at first appear. Her reason for standing so dead still as the pivot of this circle of heath country was just as obscure. Her extraordinary fixity, her conspicuous loneliness, her heedlessness of night, betokened among other things an utter absence of fear. A tract of country unaltered from that sinister condition which made Caesar anxious every year to get clear of its glooms before the autumnal equinox. A kind of landscape and weather which leads travellers from the south to describe our island as Homer's Cimmerian land, was not, on the face of it, friendly to women. It might reasonably have been supposed that she was listening to the wind, which rose somewhat as the night advanced, and laid hold of the attention. The wind indeed seemed made for the scene, as the scene seemed made for the hour. Part of its tone was quite special. What was heard there could be heard nowhere else. Gusts of innumerable series followed each other from northwest, and when each one of them raced past, the sound of its progress dissolved into three. Treble, tenor, and bass notes were to be found therein. The general ricochet of the whole over pits and prominences had the gravest pitch of the chime. Next there could be heard the baritone buzz of a holly tree. Below these in force, above them in pitch, a dwindled voice strove hard at a husky tune, which was the peculiar local sound alluded to. Thinner and less immediately traceable than the other two, it was far more impressive than either. In it lay what may be called the linguistic peculiarity of the heath, and being audible nowhere on earth off a heath, it afforded a shadow of reason for the woman's tenseness, which continued as unbroken as ever. Throughout the blowing of these plaintive November winds, that note bore a great resemblance to the ruins of human song, which remained to the throat of 80. It was a worn whisper, dry and papery, and it brushed so distinctly across the ear that, by the accustomed, the material minutiae in which it originated could be realised as if by touch. It was the united products of infinitesimal vegetable causes, and these were neither stems, leaves, fruit, blades, prickles, lichen, nor moss. They were the mummied heath bells of the past summer, originally tender and purple, now washed colourless by Michaelmas rains and dried to dead skins by October's suns. So low was an individual sound from these that a combination of hundreds only just emerged from silence. And the myriads of the whole declivity reached the woman's ear, but as a shrivelled and intermittent recitative. Yet scarcely a single accent among the many afloat tonight could have such power to impress a listener with thoughts of its origin. One inwardly saw the infinity of those combined multitudes, and perceived that each of the tiny trumpets was seized on entered, scoured and emerged from by the wind as thoroughly as if it were as vast as a crater. The spirit moved them. Merely the phrase forced itself upon the attention, and an emotional listener's fetishistic mood might have ended in one of more advanced quality. It was not, after all, that the left-hand expanse of old blooms spoke, or the right hand of those on the slope in front, but it was the single person of something else speaking through each at once. Suddenly, on the barrow, there mingled with all this wild rhetoric of night a sound which modulated so naturally into the rest that its beginning and ending were hardly to be distinguished. The bluffs and the bushes and the heather bells had broken silence. At last, so did the woman, and her articulation was but as another phrase of the same discourse as theirs. Thrown out on the winds, it became twined in with them, and with them it flew away. What she uttered was a lengthened sigh, apparently at something in her mind which had led her to her presence here. There was a spasmodic abandonment about it, as if, in allowing herself to utter the sound, the woman's brain had authorized what it could not regulate. One point was evident in this, that she had been existing in a suppressed state, and not in one of languor or stagnation. Far away down the valley, the faint shine from the window of the inn still lasted on, and a few additional moments proved from that window, or what was within it, had more to do with the woman's sigh than had either her own actions or the scene immediately around. She lifted her left hand, which held a closed telescope. This she rapidly extended, as if she were well accustomed to the operation, and raised it to her eye, directing it towards the light beaming from the inn. The handkerchief which had hooded her head was now a little thrown back, her face being somewhat elevated. A profile was visible against the dull monochrome of cloud around her, and it was as though side shadows from the features of Sappho and Mrs. Siddons had converged upwards from the tomb to form an image like neither, but suggesting both. This, however, was merely superficiality. In respect of character, a face may make certain admissions by its outline, but it fully confesses only in its changes. Well, I hope you enjoyed the excerpt from The Native Returns by Thomas Hardy there, and the Sequential Pro 3. Well, that's the last book and synthesizer combination I had planned when I came up with this concept. I'm going to need your help, so please, in the comments below, if there's a book or a passage from a book, I mean, that's more important. I can't read the whole book, obviously. Please put in the comments below and we'll do this. Classics are preferable, but it doesn't have to be. And what synthesizer you'd like that to be paired with, perhaps. Combinations. Share your thoughts in the comments below. As always, thank you very much for your time here. If you don't already do so and you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. Don't forget to like and share. Enjoy. And until the next time, don't go out on the heath alone.